What's up, guys? It's James here from Smoking, where we review, communicate, and educate all things tobacco. Today, we are joined with George. So let's run the intro. Let's get into these cigars. So for anyone who's watching at home, I'm going to be smoking the Wise Man. And the reason I chose the Wise Man, because when you was last up here, you said this was the cigar that converted you.
Yeah.
From being one of those dreaded Cuban-only smokers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was it about this cigar that converted you from being Cuban to, oh, okay, New World have actually got something about them? What was it?
Well, so I'd been smoking Cuban cigars, for up to 10 years at that point. And people kept giving me cigars from Nicaragua and Dominican Republic. And I'd smoke them out of politeness as much as anything, but I'd write them off on the case of their origin before I'd smoked them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then one day I was walking through the park, right, and I was on my lunch break and I wanted a cigar. And I had this in my pocket. Someone had given me this. So I smoked it. And what really struck me was the fact that it was just so multi-layered, developed so much. It had real nuance and complexity and balance above all else. And I really enjoyed it. And it did a strange thing where it changed my world in such a positive way. It also destroyed my world, right? Because as at the time a cigar retailer, I've been telling people for years, don't smoke that stuff. Don't smoke that stuff. But then quite literally the next day, I'd have to turn.
You were smoking that stuff.
Right? It's not that I was lying. It was that I was wrong, So yeah.
Well, so before you got involved in the cigar industry, what was it that got you involved in cigars in the first place?
Well, so before I was involved in the cigar industry, I was a musician, and cigars always have held a place in musicians' lives. It's a really nice way of socializing. It's an alternative way of relaxing. And as much as anything, my grandfather has a big influence on that, where growing up, I'd always smell cigars. They're never expensive cigars. They're usually machine-made cigars.
Yep.
But he was a lorry driver, so traditionally, as a lorry driver, you'd always be smoking in your cab. And so it was kind of that smell, that feeling of what a cigar meant was ingrained sort of within me from quite an early age. So it was quite, it's been a big part of my life.
Do you remember what your first cigar was?
It was a D4,
The
Partagas D4. First hand-rolled long filler cigar was a Partagas D4, which was absolutely brutal.
For a first cigar.
Yeah, it's quite amazing actually.
Yeah, it's probably my favourite Cuban cigar. Is the D4. I always smoke on when it comes around to my birthday, but I could not imagine that being my my first. Do you remember how you felt after? Did you enjoy it?
I really enjoyed the flavour. I didn't enjoy the fact that the whole world was spinning. And I didn't smoke a cigar for about 6 months afterwards. But then when I got back into it, I started again on lighter bodied cigars. I didn't actually go down to light cigars until I'd already smoked medium cigars for some time. And
Well, it's okay.
this, for some reason, that's just how I got into it. Traditionally, of course, you go light, then you go to light to medium.
Work your way up.
Medium, full. But yeah, I kind of went full, then medium, then light, then full. Yeah.
I've slowly found a nice appreciation in lighter cigars. I never touched anything that had a Connecticut wrapper. I would stay clear of it. And I think over the last, say, 12, 18 months, I think I'd rather go for something with a Connecticut wrapper on it. There's some absolutely fantastic cigars, especially on the UK market.
Yeah, there are. And you know, the interesting thing is that in lighter bodied cigars, medium bodied cigars, now, like with the high clear Castle Victorian here, people are using quite interesting and unique tobaccos, you know, and creating different flavor profiles. It's a really interesting thing. If you look at the way that, you know, Connecticut shade is used now, it's very interesting. And also lighter shades of Mexican San Andreas, which we don't see very much in the UK here, but they do exist.
Absolutely. So what's the actual construction on the high clear Castle that you're smoking? I really enjoyed that cigar.
Fantastic.
I really enjoyed it when I had it. So what's the actual construction and the build behind that?
So this is quite incredible. In terms of construction, you're looking at, that's obviously a 6x52 Toro, but you're looking at a 7th priming Ecuador Habano wrapper, which is really unusual. It comes from really high up on the plant, and it's a really highly sought after leaf. There aren't very many 7th priming Ecuadorian Habanos out there. And then underneath that, you've got a Brazilian Matafina binder. So the Ecuador has a really unique sort of leatheriness to it, a really unique sort of tannin content that's very well balanced. And then you've got that Brazilian Matafina binder, right, which is one of the ancient forms of tobacco. And that has naturally quite a high sugar content. So that brings in that little extra sweetness. And the filler is from largely from Jalapa and Ometepe in Nicaragua, and both really, and some from Esteli, but particularly Ometepe and Jalapa produce really unique notes. Ometepe with that red clay soil, very creamy, you know, really viscous and dense in texture, whereas Ometepe has that unique sort of spice
from the volcanic soil. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people are put off from Ometepe tobaccos for that exact reason. But I think in the perfect blend, it's got such a unique. You can almost taste it. And a lot of people say they'll smoke a cigar and they can't taste it. You can almost tell if there's almost Ometepe tobaccos in there, because it's right there, right at the back of the tongue. It almost sits in a certain place in your mouth as well.
It does, right?
That's what I think I absolutely loved about it. And I think when I was visiting Nicaragua in January, that's when I found my love for it. So I used to be like, And since then I found out how hard it is to grow tobacco on the island as it is.
Yeah.
I found a new appreciation for literally. I just think only the Nicaraguans will find a patch of land because of volcanoes erupted and said, we can put some tobacco on that.
Yeah.
Only the Nicaraguans would do that.
It's absolutely fantastic. It's insanity, you know, in the best way. You know, it's just really unique, you know. But did you find that, so do you have any particular like favorite regions of Nicaragua where you get, you know, in terms of single origin tobaccos, do you have any particular favorite regions?
I think I prefer the Esteli region. Yeah. Just because it seems to be that perfect meat. It's not trying to be too spicy. It's not too mild. They seem to produce a real good, perfect medium blend. And when I was out there, they actually said it's the easiest sort of growing as well. And that's why they think it is, and that's why they can produce so much there compared to other regions. For me, Nicaragua, I'm sure people will argue this in the comments, I think they produce some of the best tobaccos in the world.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people will argue with me otherwise, so I've got a little love for them. But, you know, I definitely think, Esteli, what about yourself?
I'd say, you know, Esteli, for me, Esteli encompasses what we know of as Nicaraguan cigars, right? Yeah. I've always, just my personal tastes, because that's what I love about cigars. Everyone likes something different. I've always loved tobacco from Jalapa and Ometepe, sort of equally. But Jalapa's so unusual for Nicaragua in that sense. It has the same red clay soil as Cuba's Huerto Bajo, but it's at a higher elevation, so you're going to produce something different. And also the soil has been, you know, it's less stripped than Cuba.
Yeah.
Because the soil hasn't been worked for that long.
Yeah.
And it just produces something that, for me, has a really unique mouthfeel, which is the same Ometepe, right? You're right. It's further back. You can tell from the text.
Right back here, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, every Nicaraguan cigar has to have tobacco from Esteli, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has to.
It's almost like the perfect foundation block to build upon.
It really is.
Because it's that perfect medium bodied. It's got a bit of spice, which Nicaragua's famous for, but it's not so mild that it's pointless having it there. And it's almost like you build the blocks on top of it from the reason whether it's Condenga or anywhere else. So what's the construction behind the Wise Man?
The Wise Man. So here you have a Mexican San Andreas wrapper. Then you have a filler and binder from Nicaragua. He uses a lot of tobacco from Jalapa and Esteli. There's no Matepe in that actually, but a lot of that tobacco is from the north in Nicaragua. That wrapper's really special. Really is quite special actually, in the fact that Nick Lillo of Foundation Cigar Company, when he worked at his previous cigar company, he introduced Mexican San Andreas tobacco to Nicaragua.
Right, okay.
So San Andreas wasn't viable premium cigars, just in the way that it was produced. Mexican tobacco just wasn't used in premium cigars. So Nick worked with Mexican farmers and Nicaraguan producers to change the way that it was fermented, essentially,
Right.
to make it viable for premium cigars. So whenever he works with San Andreas, and that's a prime example, it's something really special. It really is something unique. And you can tell from the colour of it.
It's an absolutely stunning colour.
Which is quite unusual for San Andreas. It's usually so dark.
Yeah.
You know, and he likes to use, a lot of very dark tobaccos, but the San Andreas that he uses quite often is a little lighter in colour, which is really interesting.
It's an absolutely lovely looking scan. I love the slight box pressed on it as well. I know some people, it seems to be like a Marmite, isn't it, of the cigars people. You either love a box press or you hate it. Personally, for me, I absolutely love it. It's such a comfortable cigar to just sit there and have in your hand. It tastes absolutely amazing.
Here's a question for you, right? Do you like a really extreme box press?
No.
Is there like a point at which box press becomes too much?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And a prime example was on the EP Carrillo, the Pledge. It's amazing in when there's wind because it doesn't roll anywhere when you put it down. So it serves a great purpose that it doesn't go anywhere. But at the same time, I have this habit that actually Eddie Sahakian told me is that every 2 or 3 puffs rotate the cigar 90 degrees, and that way you can have a pretty steady burn. Or if you've got an uneven burn, it regulates it. And the only problem is when you have an extreme box pressed, it's really horrible holding it that way, as you feel like your fingers are separated massively. Where a soft box press like this, it's still easy just to
it's
rotate
easy
in your hand.
to actually work with.
So it's still comfortable in the mouth. What about you? Do you feel like there's a certain
I do.
level of
I don't like square cigars. Personally.
Oh, you're an anti-box press?
No, well, I do like box press. I like a natural box press.
Yeah.
But something that is overly box pressed to me is unnatural and is removed from what a box press really is. Because a box press is where the box is made too small.
Yep.
And the cigars are pressed into it.
Yeah.
So, and in part that comes from originally packaging cigars for transit. So the cigars wouldn't roll around in a box.
Yep.
But over time, that's become so extreme.
Yeah, of course.
And it can open up the drawer a little too much for me.
Extreme.
So, but yeah, a soft box press, it's perfect for me. Easy to hold, easy to smoke.
Comfortable. I put it down, it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I want.
Rest it on the head.
Yeah.
That's all right.
So we've got some other ones to the side of us as well. So we've got the Tabernacle. That looks like a cigar that's really dominating. And I still haven't smoked that one yet either. So, and what I'll do is I'll pop it up on the screen here now. What's the construction behind that? Because that's quite a really dark.
Yeah.
I kind of bring it up to people when I've said, I'm sitting down with you. And everyone always says, have you tried that one yet?
Yeah.
So what's the story behind that one?
So, I love the Tabernacle, right? It looks more daunting than it is. So the Tabernacle is certainly full in body,
Right.
and it certainly really, really rich in flavour, but it's never overwhelming, which is really interesting. And that's been, I've taken that from feedback. And I've got to take that from feedback because I've smoked a lot of very strong cigars. And so I'm kind of used to it. Yeah, but that's been the overwhelming feedback. There are a few reasons for that, right? So the Tabernacle, a really interesting line. Again, like with all Foundation lines, in terms of his artwork, it's incredible. And the stories behind the cigars, the sort of more esoteric stories. But the tobacco itself, you're looking at a Connecticut broadleaf wrapper, right? From the chief of broadleaf himself. So Nick Melillo is the chief of broadleaf. He is pretty much the authority on Connecticut broadleaf in the cigar industry. The office is based in Connecticut, and he gets the best of the best. In Connecticut broadleaf, that wrapper on the Tabernacle has the highest natural oil content, highest natural mineral content, highest natural sugar content of any one cigar tobacco.
Wow.
It's one of the most expensive cigar tobaccos per weight. It has some of the highest demand and lowest supply. And it really balances out a lot of the more powerful tobaccos, like that San Andreas binder. Again, a really unusual binder there.
Yes.
The Connecticut broadleaf has really high sugar content. San Andreas has really high sugar content. The San Andreas has more tannic sort of thing going on.
Yeah.
And then the filler, you're looking at a lot of tobacco from Esteli, Ometepe, and some from Jalapa. And you're looking at a little bit of tobacco from Honduras in the Jamastran Valley, which adds a little extra soiliness to the blend.
I can imagine that being quite an earthy and spicy smoke then.
Yeah, it's quite earthy. It's spicy. What I really like about it is that it's not overwhelmingly spicy at any one point, because you put those ingredients together on paper, right? And you think
it sounds like
going to be like
bomb.
that. There is the potential for that to be sandpaper.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
It's the opposite. It's so well balanced. It's so well balanced that it's unreal. Actually, I really love that.
I'm looking forward to lighting that one up, and of course. And I'm not saying it because I'd put the next cigar in my top 5 cigars of all time.
Really?
The Chartered Oak. What a fantastic cigar. And I love the story behind the name of where the Chartered Oak comes from. So what's the blend and the build on the Chartered Oak?
So what's really interesting with this is that it is a Connecticut broadleaf wrapper again.
Yep.
And you're looking at binder and filler from Nicaragua. Now, the really interesting thing about the binder and filler from Nicaragua is that it's a very unusual cigar. Usually, of course, you'd use tobacco from all different parts of the plant.
Yeah.
But this is predominantly seco.
Right.
Like, we're talking a huge percentage of the cigar, which is really hard to do. But it lends something, it gives it a really unique flavor profile when you pair that really sweet and rich Connecticut broadleaf wrapper with those really sort of pleasantly sort of dry and flavor profile, woody, leathery, creamy seco from Nicaragua. It's just fantastic.
It was an absolutely beautiful blend. And if we've actually dropped, I believe it was last week at the point of filming this, I dropped our review of it. So if you have people who haven't watched it, I'll leave in the link just below. And it started off really strong and like a lot of spice, and I thought, okay, let's settle into this, and that completely dropped back during that second, third, and all those leather and those woody profiles. It was absolutely stunning. I think that's probably why it's one of my favourite cigars.
Oh, really? Yeah, I'm really happy to hear that. So it is really unique cigar, isn't it? You know, at that price point, there's nothing else that has that Connecticut broadleaf wrapper at that quality. And it really shines through, because when you take all of that sort of single origin tobacco and put something really unique on it, it really makes a difference. Bear in mind, the wrapper, and this is so contentious, there's so much opinion here, right? But it's my understanding, that if you take it from a scientific point of view, the wrapper is only going to be about 1% of the cigar in terms of weight. It's so fine.
Yeah, it's so thin. Yeah.
It's so thin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the thing is that we spend so much time talking about wrappers. But the reason for that is because the wrapper may not have the greatest influence on the smoke itself, but the smoke is only really about 75%, I'd say between 65 and 75% of the actual cigar experience. Because if you think of it in a way that when you frost the glass, the frosting on the edge of that glass will only be a very tiny percentage of the actual content of the drink.
Yeah.
But it will make a huge difference because it is the part in immediate contact with your palate.
Yeah.
That wrapper is bleeding flavours down the side of the palate. You know, it's coating the palate in preparation for the smoke. And that's why it's so important. And yeah, the Charter Oak really showcases that really well.
It absolutely does. It's absolutely fantastic. I think whenever people come to me, and we receive a lot of messages, people saying, I've been smoking cigars for a couple of months now. I want to start upping it. I've had enough of the light smokes. I want a nice, good step up. Chartered Oak is always the one I recommend. Even before we stocked you, I always said, you need to try the Chartered Oak.
Oh,
it's an absolutely fantastic. So when we found out that you were coming up and we were stocking you, I was so happy.
Oh,
I even said to Paul, I was like, look, if we only stock in certain ones, we have to get the Chartered Oak in, because it's just a great all-round cigar. I think you've experienced so much of the great characteristics that Nicaraguan tobacco can give you, just in that one stick.
Yeah,
it's absolutely, it's brilliant. And I think the one thing I love about the Foundation Cigars is each one has its own little story behind the names, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
So where does the Wise Man come from?
So the Wise Man, on the band, you have a mask. So in the middle you have a horse, and on the left and right you have Conquistador. Now, the Wise Man is the direct translation of El Buense. And El Buense is recognized by UNESCO as the Western Hemisphere's oldest piece of native satire. So I love this, right? Because, so imagine this, yeah? You're a conquistador. Yeah, you land in Nicaragua. After a couple of days, everyone greets you with a nice, huge party. Everyone's singing, dancing, having a great time. You see this fantastic dance and you think, I've arrived, everyone loves me. You know? What they didn't understand is that this dance, which is El Buense is the dance, was entirely taking the mickey out of the conquistadors. Wow, okay. And so it's still practiced in Nicaragua today, El Buense, the dance. And it's one of the sort of only things, if you like, that is truly Nicaraguan in an ancient sense, in what is a very modern and multicultural society. Yeah. And so it's really important for Nicaragua. And after Nick Melillo left Drew Estate and started Foundation, that's why he chose that name for his first line. He wanted an homage to Nicaragua, the country that had welcomed him since 2003, the country that had welcomed him and allowed him to make it his home.
I love that. Absolutely love that. It might be a given, but what's the story behind? It might be clue in the title, but
Highclere Castle Victorian. Right. So, what's really, really fantastic about this? I love this cigar. I really love this cigar. It's something really unusual because, so Highclere Castle is a castle in Newbury, in which Lord Carnarvon lives. Now, Highclere Castle and the Earls of Porchester, Lord Carnarvon, they have both the castle and the lords have a really, really strong tie with cigars. Yeah. Going back to the 19th century, so Edward VII would regularly smoke at Highclere Castle in the library. Yeah. Churchill was a very regular visitor.
I can imagine.
And cigars were smoked when the Earl was in the 19th century, the first commander of Canada, and cigars were smoked when the Earl discovered King Tutankhamun's tomb.
Wow.
In the 1920s.
Yep.
So for this, Nick Melillo got together with Lord Carnarvon and Adam von Gutkin and went through the records of which cigars were smoked at Highclere Castle in the late 19th century. Yeah. Now, Nick has an incredible knowledge of tobacco, the history of tobacco, and he has actually one of the oldest cigars in the world in his possession, which is from a shipwreck off the coast of, I think, Carolina, which the last stop was Havana. It's from 1837.
Right.
So, he used this knowledge of 19th century cigars and the records from Highclere Castle to reproduce a 19th century cigar using modern tobaccos.
Wow. Okay.
So that is why it's got an Ecuador 7th priming Habano wrapper, for instance.
Yeah.
Shade growing technique, that is growing tobacco under shades in the fields,
Yep.
only came in 1902. Thanks to essentially the US Department of Agriculture and the Cuban government, brand new Cuban government at the time, working together to combat high yield, low cost crop from Indonesia. So that's when they brought in shade growing techniques. So this wrapper, this Ecuador 7th priming, is really the sort of thing that you find in the 19th century. And he's done the same thing in the way that he's blended the filler itself to replicate the way a 19th century cigar developed. And it's really quite incredible.
It was a lot spicier than what I thought it was going to be. So when I sit down and smoke a cigar, I try and not look into them because I don't want that to influence I don't want to read that, oh, you're going to get spice, because then subconsciously I'm looking out for it.
Yeah.
So I wasn't quite sure what I was expecting when I sat down for that.
Yeah.
But I've recommended it to so many people since.
Yeah, okay.
And I've bought a couple since.
Oh, man,
so I've actually got some sat in the humidor as well. It's an absolute great cigar.
Thank you.
So,
you're right, it is quite, particularly for the first third, it's quite spice forward.
It settles in.
Yeah, and then it settles in.
Yeah.
I think actually you've said fantastic things about this before as to why a cigar is spicy at the beginning. Right?
Yep.
And remind me what it's the tip of the leaf.
The tip of the leaf. So the point of the leaf is always placed. It's placed throughout, but they'll always put the tip of the leaf at the start because it's got a higher ignition, and because of that, it will always give off bitter and spicy flavors. And this is why if someone's lit up a cigar and they go, "Oh, that's too spicy, I don't think it's for me," I always say, give it 10-15 minutes, give it about half an inch into the cigar, and I can guarantee it might be a spicy cigar, but that will take a step back eventually. And then when they're scrunching it and they're ripping it, they'll put tip of the leaf there, tip of the leaf there, tip of the leaf there, so it keeps the ignition going. But that's essentially why you get really bitter, because it's the hottest the leaf is going to be, and then eventually as it comes down and goes to the thicker bit, it mellows out a bit. So yeah, that's essentially where you get like a really bitter and really strong. Even if you smoke something so take the Brickhouse Double Connecticut, probably the lightest cigar in the world, you still get really bitter and real harsh spice at the beginning. Yeah. Before it mellows out.
It's really interesting, isn't it?
What's the story behind the name of the Tabernacle? And who is the guy on the band and on the box?
All right. So this is really interesting. Yeah. So on the Tabernacle band, and on the box, you've got Haile Selassie. Now, Haile Selassie was the 225th king of Abyssinia, the last emperor of Ethiopia. But on paper, it has nothing to do with cigars. It's a really cool image. On paper, I was like, so
absolutely, yeah.
My first question was, it looks really cool. You know, why is Haile Selassie on a cigar band? I said to Nick, it's nothing to do with cigars. Nick said, right. It's quite a lot to do with cigars, actually, because there are a few different stories behind this, and that's why I really like this is multi-layered. So, Haile Selassie was the last emperor of Ethiopia, and the Ethiopian church claims to hold the tabernacle, which held the Ark of the Covenant.
Wait.
Now, if it's your belief, the Ark of the Covenant essentially teaches you how to live your life in a good and pious way. If it's your belief, it'll tell you how to treat others, how to treat yourself, how to proceed through the world, and be a good person, essentially.
Yeah.
Now, bearing in mind that the tabernacle held the Ark of the Covenant, isn't every cigar smoker's humidor their tabernacle? Because I don't know about yourself. In fact, I'm pretty sure you'd say the same thing. But cigars have taught me a huge amount. Cigars have taught me how to converse with others, how to debate, not argue. That's a really key thing cigars have taught me.
Absolutely.
They taught me how to take time for myself in order to take greater time for others. They taught me how to care, lovingly for an inanimate object that will never, actually actively give love back. But it'll show it in other ways.
Yes, absolutely.
it's taught me so many things being a cigar smoker and cigars themselves, and therefore every cigar smoker's humidor is their tabernacle.
That's right.
The other thing about Haile Selassie, right? Yeah. Is Haile Selassie was born Rastafari.
Right.
So Haile Selassie is the core deity of the Rastafarian movement.
Okay.
And in the Second World War, all of the tobacco farmers left Connecticut to go and fight. No one was growing broadleaf. No one was growing that Connecticut broadleaf.
Yeah.
So the US Department of Agriculture said to Jamaican people, anyone who wants to come to Connecticut to come and grow Connecticut broadleaf can come to Connecticut and stay for the rest of their lives. And their family can stay and you become American. And you get a job and you bring your ancient tobacco knowledge from Jamaica to Connecticut and we'll work together. And so that's what they did. So nowadays, Connecticut broadleaf is farmed by a huge community of people of Jamaican descent.
Wow, okay, I didn't know.
And therefore, essentially, Rastafarianism was always quite a big thing within this community. So Haile Selassie holds a really key part of that.
Yeah.
Nick really loves Jamaican music, so do I really love Jamaican music.
Absolutely,
Nick really loves Jamaican music, and it also holds a real sort of key part in that. But there's a final story behind Haile Selassie, right? Yeah, and the Ethiopians. And this is my favourite. So, in the 1590s, Girolamo Benzoni, and I always get that name wrong. Sorry if I get that name wrong. I've been saying it for years, but I've been pulled up so many times. But I'll call him Girolamo Benzoni, right? He published a book chronicling his travels through Nicaragua in 1541.
Right.
Now, he noted that the Spanish weren't smoking tobacco. The only people smoking tobacco were the native Nicaraguans and enslaved Ethiopians.
Right.
So there's a really beautiful story here, in the fact that the native Nicaraguans clearly saw their most sacred good. To them, it was more sacred than gold. And they thought we could share this with the people in power, the people who could save our lives. Or we could share it with the people who needed it the most, people in the same position as them, the enslaved Ethiopians. And they chose to share that tobacco with the Ethiopians, not with the Spanish. They couldn't give anything back.
Yeah.
But they knew that the tobacco would really mean something to them. And for me, that kind of sums up what cigars are.
Couldn't agree more.
It's something to truly share for the sake of what it is and for the sake of what it means to us as human beings.
Yeah. I love that story. I think that's probably my favourite meaning and story behind all of... They've all got stories behind them, but I love that. I didn't even realise that it was so in depth where the name come from. That's like such an in-depth story of why it was named that. That's fantastic.
I mean, I'm gonna be straight up with you. I just thought it was a cool name as well. But when I heard,
I just thought it was a cool name, and I looked at the band and I was like, "That's a really cool looking cigar."
Yeah.
So, you'd say, I think that's one thing I love about Foundation Cigars, and obviously Nick puts a lot of time and effort into it. He doesn't just produce a cigar and say, "That's a cigar. We're going to call it this." It's almost like every single one has its own unique story behind it, and I think this is why I love the Chartered Oak, because I might be wrong, but isn't that a little bit of a homage back for his upbringing in tobacco?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. I mean, he grew up in Connecticut. The office is still in Connecticut, so he grew up around all of that broadleaf, all of that Connecticut shade, and his grandfather smoked Connecticut cigars, so he worked at the Winchester Repeating Arms Factory, and he smoked Connecticut cigars his whole life. And it really is an homage to that. Nowadays, I don't think anyone produces an all Connecticut cigar. They should.
That'd be a very unique cigar.
Yeah. But it is an homage to that. And Connecticut tobacco has a really important place in our history as well. In the fact that, if you take, for instance, during the Second World War, we couldn't import tobacco or cigars from Cuba because imports had to be from the Commonwealth or from friendly nations.
Yeah.
Now, that meant that we could import tobacco and cigars from Jamaica, and we could also use Connecticut broadleaf in domestically produced cigars. So by and large, most cigars smoked in the UK, at the time anyway, were produced in the UK by hand.
Yeah.
And so during the Second World War, when you see those pictures of Churchill with the cigar, in public, he was smoking either a Jamaican cigar or a Connecticut broadleaf cigar.
I don't think people realise how much of an impact Jamaicans and Jamaican tobacco actually had. And on the industry as a whole. Have you smoked Jamaican tobacco, Jamaican cigar? I smoked a lot when I was out there, because I knew they produced cigars, but I didn't realise how much they produce cigars until I was out there visiting, and then I bought a couple of boxes. And it's a very unique flavour, and I think we need to get more Jamaican tobacco over in the UK now, because it's so unique. It tastes like no other tobacco you'll ever smoke.
It's true. I mean, to be honest with you, I've only ever smoked really old Jamaican cigars. So I don't know too much about Jamaican cigars that are produced today. Who's producing Jamaican cigars today?
You've got Blue Mountain cigars, so BMT. They're probably the most dominant ones. If you go out there, they're everywhere. And then they kind of seem to have like loads of little branches. And the one thing, whether you're into infused cigars or not, BMC do a dipped range, and they literally just dip these cigars in anything. You've got rum. I'm sure there's a milkshake one, I think.
Milkshake cigar.
And they just dip it and they leave it.
All right.
And it is the nicest thing in the world. It's the only kind of flavoured or infused cigar I've smoked that genuinely tastes exactly like what it's infused with.
Are they like long filler, hand rolled?
Yep, all long filler.
Wow.
All hand rolled. They've obviously got their short fillers as well. Next time you come up, I've got a box in my humidor at home. I'll bring you a Jamaican cigar.
All right.
I might have smoked through all my dipped rum as well. And I'm not an
don't blame
infused
you.
cigar smoker
I
kind
don't
of.
blame you.
I'm not that kind of. But it genuinely tastes like rum.
That's amazing.
It's fantastic. The Jamaicans have really hit the nail on the head with it. And we need to get more Jamaican cigars over here.
Yeah, we do. We do. It's a really interesting thing. Those old brands, I mean, you know, at one point, because of what happened during the Second World War, a lot of the Cuban brands were owned by British companies anyway.
Yeah.
And they went to produce in Jamaica under the same name as well.
Yeah.
So you get like, you know, Paul Aranyaga was Philip Morris, and they set up a Lara factory, they called Larra, which was Paul Aranyaga in Jamaica.
Yeah.
And there's so many examples of that. But yeah, I know that Nick has actually spoken to the Jamaican government, essentially Jamaican farmers.
Yep.
They approached Nick to try and rejuvenate tobacco and cigar production in Jamaica. But I think that they find it quite difficult when they're competing with the Dominican Republic.
Yeah, I can imagine.
There's already so much modern infrastructure there that they'd have to set up so much that it would go quite a long way.
Absolutely. So, going back before you joined the company you are now, what kick-started your cigar journey? What was your first step into the industry? Obviously, you was enjoying cigars and smoking cigars yourself. What was your first step into the industry? What was you doing?
The industry, yeah. So it's a good question. My first job in a cigar shop was at a shop then called Casa on Wardour Street in Soho, London, which I think at the time was owned by Terence Conran. It was part of the restaurant Floridita, but it was a separate cigar shop. And it was a really lovely small cigar shop. It was a bit of a wild time. We were open until midnight every night.
Wow.
On the streets of Soho with no security on the door.
Wow.
It's really interesting.
That's very interesting.
Let's say I called the police a few times. But I worked there for a few years, and I can't remember how long now. But then I ended up, long story short, working for a company called James J. Fox.
The famous J.J. Fox.
And there I ended up taking care of all of the vintage and rare cigars, as well as doing public speaking and educational stuff like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of historical work. And
it is a fantastic store, I think. I don't think I've been to London for the last 3 or 4 years. Every time I always pop my head in. Always go down into the vaults, see the Winston Churchill chair. That store seems to be so steeped in history.
It is.
I believe it was Winston Churchill's go-to
Yeah.
personal cigar
So
tobacconist.
he opened his account there in August 1900, which is when he first came back from Cuba. When he first became MP for Oldham. And so he literally purchased his first cigars. He purchased British Steel there, and his last cigars were purchased there. So his last bill, I think, was actually settled after he passed away.
Oh wow!
So yeah,
wow.
Yeah, he smoked. He went to practice his whole smoking life. It's quite incredible.
I think that's
so. Yeah,
crazy.
They've. It is a really interesting shop for that because you've got obviously Oscar Wilde purchased his cigarettes there, 24 karat gold tip. No wonder he went bankrupt. And obviously George V and VI, Edward VII, the brief Edward VIII, and yeah, loads of others. So that was the amazing thing about working there is sort of what went on within those walls and what you find sometimes. You know, it was pretty astounding.
It must be quite like a proud moment that you're part of the history, because they're one of the longest running tobacconists, especially in London.
Yeah.
It must be quite like a proud moment to say I was part of.
Yeah, I haven't even thought of it that way. You know, I haven't even thought of it that way. I think I was just more of a nuisance than anything. But yeah, you're right. I guess they've been around since I think 1787.
It's been a long time.
I think it's the longest running cigar shop in one continuous spot in the world, and I think it's only one shop older, which is La Civette in Paris.
Wow. Especially when you walk up and down St. James's now, it's almost a cigar heaven, isn't it? You could almost do like a pub crawl version of cigars from the top of the hill to the bottom.
You could.
And those guys kind of just almost like the foundation stone to start that place.
And it's really interesting because I think, and something that Smoke King and the Green family, you know, have done the same thing. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
which is something really quite amazing in the fact that until really fairly recently, there were tobacconists everywhere.
Yep.
And sadly, as times have changed, as smoking has changed. It's the way that, and when I say smoking, it's as in smoking cigars, not smoking the company, Smoke King.
Yeah.
But smoking has changed, many shops have dropped away. So in the St. James's area, in that square mile, there are 120 tobacconists around the 1930s through to the 40s.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's about longevity and it's about reputation and treating people well. You know.
Yeah.
I think like Paul Green here, he's been a tobacconist since the 70s.
80s. Started up as a little newsagent in the middle of a housing estate.
Yeah. Amazing.
And then just over time grew bigger. Then he was up into Leeds, and then obviously like lockdown hit. Well, I think it was about 2009, 2011. They decided, okay, the internet is quite an important thing, so we need to be on the internet. Slowly growed over time, and then in lockdown, I think it's crazy. They went to working out of a garage.
Yeah.
And then within 4 years, within 4 years, they've gone from working in a garage.
Yeah.
To owning 2 units in an old 1800s mill. We have one of the largest walk-in humidors in the UK.
What a humidor, incredible humidor actually.
It's probably my favourite thing to do is to bring new people in and just say, look, and just watch their face. We had a visitor yesterday and I said to him, don't come in the shop, wait for me to come in. I want to watch you go into the shop.
Yeah.
And you did pretty much the same thing when you first came here. You was just like,
yeah.
Wow.
I remember the moment I got the train home, right? Yeah, I called my friend. I was like, you're not going to believe this. It's like, incredible. Just what a humidor, you know?
I think what's amazing is most of it was made by hands by the guys who work here.
Yeah.
So the leather fabrication around the top that's got called the Chesterfield, that was done by one of the girls at Pax Cigars. We had all the seamstresses in. The guys, I'd probably say a good 40 to 50% of that humidor was made by hands, just from people having so much loyalty and love for this company and the Greens, which are an amazing family.
Yeah.
And they said, instead of getting someone else in, let's all just chip in. So everybody here kind of has their own little, almost like Lego block in the building of that humidor. It's like our baby. It's like the heart of the building.
I really like that.
Is that little walk-in humidor. And this is why we always start off by showing people the Cuban, because it's the oldest walk-in humidor. Don't get me wrong, it's a very impressive humidor, but we always start them off in that.
Yeah.
Because as soon as we go to the new world, you don't want to.
Yeah.
Here's the old one.
Yeah, you don't want to downgrade.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You work your way up, and I think it's my favourite thing is walking people in and just going.
It really is like, even the lighting, you know.
Oh, it's incredible.
I mean, if anyone hasn't seen it, I really do just recommend checking out that humidor just for the lighting itself. It's really interesting.
It's probably my favourite room to film
it.
The best thing best thing ever is coming in at 8 o'clock in the morning. Nobody's been in, and obviously the lighting is automatic. I mean, the first person to walk into that humidor, and you open the door, it's pitch black, and it just goes, and it lights up, and you just go, you're like,
yeah.
I like this.
Yeah. That's really cool. That is really cool.
Probably my favourite question I love to ask people.
Yep.
Because you always get a different answer every single time.
All right.
And no one ever knows how to answer it. But why Foundation Cigars? Why should someone pick this? You've seen the humidor, we spoke how big it is. You've seen how many hundreds of different things we've got in there.
Yeah.
Why should they go for these?
It's a very good question. And there's essentially, I'd say, smoke these for Nick Modelo, right? Yeah. Because there's no one in the tobacco industry who thinks of cigars in that way. And he's proved that. Nick obviously blended all of the cigars with Drew Estate. He set up the production. He oversaw all the production from the ground up from 2003, you know?
Yeah.
And he learned to blend cigars. I think he started in Nick Padermo's shed in his back garden. Right? He didn't know a thing, you know. He'd run a cigar shop before. He learned from the ground up. And from really early on, Nick's thing has been tobacco.
Yeah.
The really interesting thing is that neither that company or Foundation grow their own tobacco. Right. It's quite limiting to grow your own tobacco.
Yeah.
What Nick is renowned for worldwide, and I know many people have tried to get him to do it for them, is he sources the best tobacco and uses it in really unique ways. So what he's renowned for is balance. If you want a cigar with real balance, where every single leaf has been essentially that brush stroke in the painting.
Yeah.
If you want a cigar that, like with painting, you can step back, you can look at the individual brush strokes, they're all so carefully placed. Then you step back and it's a perfect piece. That is Foundation. There's nothing out of place from the story to each leaf.
Yeah.
You know?
It's almost like you literally leaves no stone unturned. Even down to the boxes of the artwork on the boxes, even like we've gone through it, the stories behind it. It's just, this is a cigar, we're going to call it this, let's sell it.
Yeah, it's quite amazing.
He's almost like a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Nick is.
Yeah. So I'd say what a lot of people do, right, when they're producing cigars, and there's nothing wrong with this, is they'll have tobacco at their disposal and they'll make blends with this tobacco. And then they'll go, this is a really good blend and it will be a fantastic blend. Yeah, we're going to release this cigar. Yeah. I think the way that Nick thinks of it is in such a roundabout way that he's got access to quite literally the best tobacco in the world. Yeah. And he'll go around and he'll find those individual, unique, best, pieces of tobacco and then go, how can I bring these all together to tell a story?
So he sources the tobacco first. He doesn't have a story in his head or an idea in his head of what he wants and then goes and sources it? Or does he source the tobacco, gets them all rolled, smokes through it and goes, that's a story, I can make something out of that?
Well, that's a really good question, because I think the process would be different for every single cigar, But I think by and large, he tends to see the thing as a story, and they are pieces in a story as much as anything.
Yeah, I like that. And is it would you say it's a long process? Obviously, when I was out in Nicaragua, and I was asking all the, how long did it take for you to come up with this blend? How long is he a perfectionist? Does he smoke one of these that he smokes hundreds until he finds the perfect one? Or has there been certain cigars where it's come around really quickly?
Well, I know that, I don't actually know the answer to that, but I do know vaguely, that he, it really varies. So if you take, for instance, the first Highclere Castle cigar, what they did was, Nick said, "Do we want to make a High Clear Castle cigar? Yeah. Look, and you're going to come to Nicaragua for 2 weeks. We're going to see what we do, right?" And by the end of that 2 weeks, they had found a really, good blend that really fit the story and really worked out with all the historical connotations. But then I know, for instance, with the El Wednesday, he was working on that for years.
So
and the same with the Tabernacle.
Time to come up with something.
Yeah. And it depends. It's like, a musician you can write something as a stream of consciousness, and it can be just as good as something that takes a decade to write. Yeah, it's just a different writing form.
So, as a musician myself, I know that exact feeling. Sometimes you can write a song in 5 minutes and go, "This is amazing."
Yeah, literally as long as the song lasts.
And sometimes you can just be like,
"What is that? That's just happened."
Yeah, it just comes. So you must have quite a refined palate.
But me, oh yeah, extreme. I don't understand it. It's quite intense. It's just absolutely insane. Because if you think about it, and you must have seen it in Nicaragua, the people, the master blenders going around tasting, one leaf from each bale. And if you're doing that all day long, you'd think its palate would be shot after 3.
It's quite strong smoking 100% that one leaf. I did it twice. And when we was doing a master blend class, and even after just smoking 2, 100% just say this leaf. It's very brutal on your palate.
It really is. And the interesting thing is that, and what kind of makes Nick a little unique is the fact that a lot of master blenders inhale cigars.
Really?
Yeah. It's a historical thing. So a lot of master blenders will inhale cigars. They'll also obviously be touching tobacco all day long, and you absorb a certain amount through your skin.
Right.
So these guys are like beasts,
Yeah,
nothing is strong to them. But Nick doesn't inhale cigars. He smokes cigars as we smoke them, as cigars should be smoked.
Yeah.
So then, therefore, Nick's cigars are actually blended to be smoked like that.
I like that.
So it's quite interesting.
So how long have Foundation Cigars been in the UK?
In the UK, Foundation have been in the UK since, about a year now.
So they are fairly new. So I remember receiving the Chartered Oak, and it was part of a cigar club London.
Yeah.
And it was actually advertised to us as a cigar I can guarantee you haven't smoked.
Yeah.
And they'd only just landed with us. It hadn't been with us that long.
I remember really well.
So what kind of challenges have you seen? Obviously, coming from a cigar industry, you bring the cigars in, you distribute it, you're dealing with legislations all the time. Has there been any time where you've kind of actually sat there and gone, this might not work?
So, I'll say no. Because there are plenty of opportunities to say that. Countless opportunities to say, do you know what, this might not work, right? Yeah. But I know something that makes me really, really annoying sometimes is that I refuse to take that answer.
It's a good attitude to have.
That is the key. Relentlessness sometimes. I really firmly believe that there's nothing that we cannot learn, and there is no solution that cannot be found. It's just about finding that solution in the most time-efficient way.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if you're dealing with a new piece of legislation, you haven't got 10 years to deal with it. That would put you out of business.
Yes.
But you have to deal with it in a time-efficient way, and obviously in a financially efficient way, and make sure that you do deal with it. Because there is no option. I think that there's no option but to keep going forwards.
When you was deciding to bring Foundation over, was there already a demand for it? Because obviously I know it's big in like the US. Yeah. Was the UK industry like, yes, we need these, or did you just bring them over and think, right, we'll deal and distribute and deal with it once it's here?
Well, it's an interesting question, actually. No one's asked me that before. So I'd say that quite a few people have heard of Foundation. It's kind of a cult brand, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
If you know about Foundation, you really know about Foundation, and you love Foundation. But then a lot of people hadn't heard of it. I'd say by and large, most people hadn't heard of it before. It's quite big in the US, but it doesn't translate necessarily, as we know, right?
Absolutely.
So, it's been really interesting, and people really have loved Nick's story. The people love the cigars. Obviously, we're still on our mission to, introduce people to Foundation and introduce people to the incredible world of Nick Melillo, which is, a really amazing place.
Yeah, what that man doesn't know about cigars just isn't worth knowing.
Yeah. And he's just a fantastic guy. He's just a fantastic guy as well. So it's a real pleasure to, be able to work with him.
And has he been over to the UK? Has he gone around to retailers?
Yeah.
The UK cigar market is very different to the US market. Obviously, we've got more rules. We've got a different take on looking at cigars.
Yeah, we're not in West Texas here.
Yeah, exactly, where they'll just smoke anything.
Yeah, and there are no police.
Yeah, exactly. Where here you can only sample this, you can only do this, you can only do that. How does he like the UK market? Did he look at it as a challenge, like that's the market I want to crack? Bearing in mind coming from the US, where it's smoking's it's a pretty chilled view the US have on especially on cigars.
Well, I think, and I can't answer this for Nick really, but I do think the UK is a really important market. We don't smoke anywhere near as many cigars as they do in the US, right?
No.
And it isn't the same culturally as in the US. However, the UK historically and currently is a really influential market in the cigar world. It's a really respected market. And because of that, it will always be a really important market for cigar producers like Foundation.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it really interesting for us as 1573, as the distributor, in the fact that we are dealing with a very different market to many other places in the world.
And would you say people in the US, obviously being a musician yourself, if you were ever going to be signed, you'd be famous, you tour, we look at the US and go, that's the country we want to break. Do the US look at the UK and say, that's the industry we want to break into, we've got to get over there?
Yeah, I think to a degree, I think so.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I think it's a prestige thing as much as anything. It's an influence thing. It's knowing that British cigar smokers, we're really discerning. Discerning,
Yeah.
We don't go around picking out handfuls and putting them in a shopping basket. We want to know everything about that cigar. We want to know everything about what it is and why it's that way and why we enjoy it and how we enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because smoking is quite restricted here and because taxes are quite high, it makes cigars even more special to us.
Yeah.
Which I think is the opposite of what they were trying to achieve. Surprise, surprise. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love that. Absolutely love that.
So it's quite amazing, isn't it?
It is. Was Nick shocked with the amount we have to retail it? Because obviously these are quite affordable. I would say for the quality that you're getting, they're still very affordable. We sell the Chartered Oak for just under £20. I think that's an incredible price. Where in America they're very affordable.
Yeah.
Sticks was Nick when he first came over and he saw how much people were having to retail them. Go, wow, that's insane.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we really try and make sure the cigars are literally at the very best price possible. That is one of our core sort of aims, one of our core missions, because we want people to be able to smoke the cigars.
Yeah.
To be able to enjoy them. That is really our core mission. So, I think when I remember when I originally sat down with Nick and I broke down the full breakdown of taxes and everything, the full supply chain. It can be quite a shock for someone who isn't used to the UK in that sense.
Yeah.
Particularly the taxation by weight is a huge thing. It's a necessary thing. It's been around for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Taxation by weight in tobacco, but it does constitute a huge proportion of the cigar's price.
Absolutely. I think that you're right. You just touched on it. That feeds almost like our passion.
Yeah.
If we're going to drop between, say, 20 and £50 on a New World cigar, you want to rethink about it. You want to make sure your money's well spent. And I think you get that with Foundation. There's very few. Obviously, every cigar has a story. A lot of cigar brands try and put meaning behind them, but I don't think I've found another cigar brand. There's only a couple that genuinely put so much behind them.
Yeah.
You could literally read for hours. You'd smoke through the cigar before you've read everything about that cigar.
Yeah. That's part of why I really love them. That's part of why I really love them, which is it's just kind of endless, the knowledge behind them, and working with Foundation. I mean, I worked as a historian before and also specialised a lot in agriculture, but working with Foundation has improved my knowledge of tobacco history. It's improved my knowledge of tobacco production.
Yep.
The way that cigars interact with human beings, it's a really key thing, and it's really endless. I'm sure you found that sort of working with cigars every day really is a day for learning. You will learn something every single day,
and just as you think you know it and you've got it, there's always something new. And I think especially, and this is why I try and show as much content from our Nicaraguan trip, and so people can see the behind the scenes of the, from it just being to getting in your hand.
Yeah.
Have you been out there and seen the?
No.
Have you seen the factories?
No, I haven't actually yet. We're going to go next year. So it was the first thing that I wanted to do when we set up 1573 Cigars. I think it's the first thing that all of us wanted to do when we set up 1573 Cigars. But both thankfully and sadly, we have very good accountants who said you can't go to Nicaragua yet. So yeah. But it's I also don't really deal with anything over about 12 degrees. So I just kind of shut down,
A true Englishman.
Yeah. 12 degrees is the cutoff point.
It was
anything over 12 degrees is like unhealthy.
Yeah.
And then you get to about 18 degrees, and above that, it's just unnatural.
I think that was probably the biggest shock to the system being out there. I think the average was about 38, 40 when we was out there, because we went out in the middle of their summer. They were just coming to the end of it, so they were harvesting everything, and it was absolutely brutal. Sometimes you stood in the middle of these fields and no shade, like at all.
Yeah, that'll do it.
That will literally do it. So how's Foundation done in other markets? Have they cracked into? Are they in like Spain? Have they cracked the Chinese market?
So yeah. I know that Foundation are in Germany.
Okay.
And I know he's working on a few different other markets. But the thing is, right, is that it's not really a brand that can be expanded too much. Everyone wants it.
Yep.
Pretty much, I know that pretty much every single market wants Foundation. Yeah.
That's good.
There are people in every market who want to distribute it. There are people in every market that want to buy it. But Nick can only produce so many.
Of course, not owning
so many cigars.
Especially not having his own farm, of course, yeah.
Well, more than that, like he can produce as many cigars as you want using tobaccos. He proved that previously. He ran the largest cigar factory in the world, despite not growing any tobacco, right?
Yep.
But he won't compromise on that tobacco. He won't potentially compromise on quality in order to increase production. So they can be really hard to get. We've got a really good supply here in the UK, so we don't really see it.
Yep.
And we're very, very thankful to Nick and Foundation for that. Really thankful, actually, that we get very good supply here. But quite often in the US, even, they're sold out everywhere, and it's a backorder system.
That's incredible. So he's almost taken the Padron's look at cigars, because they're very much the same.
Yeah.
They probably produce the least amount out of all the places we visited on that week. They produce the least amount, but they've won the most awards. They have the highest quality. They're probably one of the most highly thought of New World.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cigars. He's almost adapted that mentality the same as Padron.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's that thing. He will not compromise on quality, in any way.
And that's what we need. We need brands like that, because there are a lot of brands who can just sheer mass produce, and they're great cigars.
Yeah, they are.
But you need those high quality, and when you know that, and you know Nick won't compromise on quality, he'd rather put out less. It makes it even more unbelievable that these retail at what they do. Because you think they would be, with the Padrons, you think they'd be up 30, 40, 50, 60 plus, 90, 100 plus. With that kind of mentality, you would expect these to retail at stupid highly priced.
Absolutely. I mean, like, if you look at the broadleaf on the Tabernacle and on the Charter Oak, I just don't understand it. Like, because that quality of broadleaf it's so intense, that tobacco, in a fantastic way. Not like, I don't mean in an overwhelming way.
Yeah.
But it's so intense that if you shine it under the light, you can literally see the glittering minerals in the tobacco.
Wow.
Right? And you don't see that quality of tobacco in like commercially produced cigars.
No.
You just don't. It's just amazing. And how he even managed to get that much Connecticut broadleaf, I don't know. He is the chief of broadleaf, so he does get the first and best. But yeah, it's quite amazing.
That's incredible. So, in your personal opinion, if someone was going to come and start and work their way through the Foundation range that we've got,
Yeah.
what order should they go in?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Because that will change person to person. But
Yeah.
what would your personal of what we got here? What order would you smoke in?
What order would I smoke them in? All in one day?
Why not?
Yeah, all right, all in one day. So I'd start with the Highclere Castle Victorian.
Mm-hmm.
Although it starts out fairly spicy, it does back off a little bit in terms of spice, and it really does. It's really very well balanced. It isn't overwhelming in any sense, in any particular note, and it's incredible in that sense. But then I'd go on to the Charter Oak.
Yep.
Which is, I find it to be a medium.
Yeah.
I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say it's in the middle of that medium spectrum.
Yeah, I'd say it's a medium. The Charter Oak, which is really interesting. And then you've got the Wise Man Robusto.
Yep.
Sort of, to me, a classic medium to full without being too spicy, or anything like that. Just a really interesting cigar as well.
This has been absolutely beautiful.
And then moving on to the Tabernacle, finally. I wouldn't smoke the Tabernacle. If you're going to smoke them all in one day, I wouldn't smoke the Tabernacle first, because it would kind of overpower everything else.
Blow your palate.
But it's, of my opinion, that if you are used to Nicaraguan cigars, right? If you're used to Nicaraguan cigars, then the Tabernacle is a great place to start.
Wow.
Because for me, it really showcases what Nic's all about.
Yeah.
In that sense. Balance, unique tobaccos, a great story, great production. Yeah.
A real in-depth story.
Yeah.
So would you say, I don't know whether you can answer, but does Nic have one cigar that's almost like his pride and joy? A great example is, I know Nick Padermo, when I was speaking to him, his 10th anniversary Sungrown.
Yeah.
He was like, that's my baby. That's like the one cigar I'm the most proud of. Does Nic have... I don't know whether you could answer that, but does he have one that says that's my kind of baby?
I can't really answer that.
Or when he was
no, but I will say that it may be the Tabernacle off the top of my head.
Yeah.
If I was Nic, right, I'd be particularly proud of the Tabernacle.
Yeah.
Because it represents, in part, what is home to him. It represents so many different things that he loves.
Yeah.
And it's done such a good job on it. And for a really unusual cigar, it's been really well received. But there's so many of them. The Egyptian box, the Senator, I don't know if you've seen that.
Not seen that one.
But the Senator is something that he's really proud of, which was brought out to commemorate the 100 years, or that 100th anniversary of the finding of King Tutankhamun's tomb.
Yep.
And yeah, I think they're all kind of like his children.
Well, the amount of time and a lot of effort that goes into him, I can imagine them all being his little baby. So obviously, do we have a short range in the UK compared to how many cigars he's actually got?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we get just a slither of the pie. So how did you decide what ones are for the UK market? Do you say the UK market have a bit more of a stronger palate, so we need these ones? How did you decide to bring these in?
Well, it's a really good question, right? It's a really good question. So I've been smoking Foundation since 2016. Yeah.
Okay.
And we've gone through the range. Obviously, we've spoken to a lot of people. We spoke to a lot of different cigar smokers. We got a lot of different cigar smokers to smoke Foundation, and we came out with what people like the most.
Yeah.
Quite simply. It would be dangerous to go by what we like.
Yeah.
It would have been very dangerous to do that. because otherwise we would have just brought out like Tabernacle, like Lancero, Double Corona, some other crazy things, which will be coming into the UK at some point. But as the best representation of what Foundation means, we really thought that it's best to start with that smaller range that we know that represent Foundation best.
So it wasn't based on you didn't say these sell really good in the US. Let's get them into the UK. You actually did a lot of research before you even bringing them over here.
Because things sell really well in the US, but they won't sell in the UK.
Yeah.
Because again, it's a very different market, as you said, it's a completely different market.
Absolutely, yeah.
In that sense, and that's what I find really fascinating about it. We have got there will be sort of more announcements coming in about a month's time.
Yeah.
In fact, so they in less than a month of some new things coming into the UK.
It's hard to sit and smoke a cigar without talking about the industry and the implications that we get. So as importers, without dropping shade over your head, is there anything that you're nervous about? Anything new that's coming in? Or are you very happy? You've obviously got the whole track and trace that's coming in later this year. I can imagine that's quite a scary time when that first was announced. Was it running around like headless chickens, like what are we going to do? Or was it, I know you said earlier you take no for an answer, or did you go, right, no, we will figure this out?
Yeah, for about 30 seconds, there was like a screaming voice in my head.
It's over.
Yeah, just swearing a lot, just sort of swearing a lot. But it's another piece of legislation. Yes, it is another piece of restrictive legislation.
Yeah.
But we've dealt with restrictive legislation for a very long time.
We always will in this industry.
We always will.
Yeah.
They'll always try and shut us down, and we've always got to find ways to use that to our advantage. Yeah. And that's what we've done historically. And so, it'll be okay. It'll be all right. I think that track and trace will actually help streamline a lot of things. For a lot of people, it might help people get cigars easier. Right, okay. And it might even, I can see ways in which essentially more cigars would be able to come into the UK.
That's a good way of looking at it, because I think a lot of people heard the whole track and trace come in and everyone just kind of panicked. And if some people have panicked for a long time saying...
Understandably. The financial implications are huge.
Oh, it's absolutely huge. I know a few small independent companies in the UK that import their own. You now have to go start looking at working with importers just because the sheer investment this track and trace system is going to be.
Yep, absolutely. And it's not so much, and without getting into sort of too much stuff that only I find interesting, and I apologise, but it's not so much the actual cost of the systems themselves. So track and trace is obviously where the goods are labelled essentially before they cross the UK border, and then they're scanned into a system whereby they go into a government system, essentially showing everywhere they've been and all the information of where they're going, but they're scanned into this system. So the actual scanning systems and the labelling systems and everything, it's quite a big cost, but it's not so much the scary cost. It's the fact that it has to be done in what you call a customs warehouse, which is legally a UK border.
Yeah.
So a customs warehouse is legally a UK border. It's not the same as keeping goods in bond, where if you keep goods in bond, you don't pay excise duty on them. And by excise duty, I mean if stuff's kept in a warehouse, if the building behind us was a bonded warehouse and it had a load of cigars in it, the duty wouldn't have been paid on those. But to come here, the other side of this wall, you'd have to pay the duty. Customs warehouse, it suspends all taxes in the same way, but it's legally a UK border. Now, the biggest cost is the fact that the government, for a new customs warehouse, want a £250,000 guarantee.
Wow.
And that is what shuts a lot of people down.
That's a big ask. No wonder people are
that is
panicked.
What makes people panic. Because you can make scanning systems, you can buy scanning systems, you can buy software and get scanning and everything. But £250,000 that you can't touch and use, that isn't invested into anything, it's just a guarantee, is a big ask.
That is a very big ask.
Yeah. So the government, again, trying to shut everyone down, but we just got to keep on going.
We've got to keep on going. We've got to keep calm, we carry on.
The other big thing, of course, is Rishi Sunak's great smoking legacy. Ooh. Yeah.
It was going to be brought up.
Yeah. Of course, Rishi Sunak wants to be seen to be the man who banned smoking for children forever. However, it's not that simple, is it?
We're not going to go in it. I think tobacco as a whole, even if you took even cigarette smoking, obviously I'm not a cigarette smoker myself, it's too ingrained in our history. It's too ingrained in our culture. It's almost like trying to ban vodka from Polish.
Exactly. And do you know what? Right. Do you know what? I've always said this thing. Yeah. And we saw this during the pandemic, that here in the UK, they'll tell us to do something. And we'll go, okay, we'll do that. Yeah. And they tell us to do something again. And we go, do we have to do that again? Yeah, and then they tell us to do something further, they tell us to do something stronger, that is more, that they enforce more. And we go,
no,
we're not doing that.
No. We're like naughty school kids, really, as a country. Just no.
Who do you think you are? We've already had a civil war here, mate. Thank you very much. So,
we will do it again.
So I think that, and I don't want to say too much for the case of jinxing it, but although the vote to ban smoking for anyone essentially born after that date has already gone through, although the vote has gone through, I think that there will be amendments made.
Yeah.
And I also think, and I don't want to jinx this too much, but I have very, very strongly think that a certain opposition side will actually use this as ammunition against the ruling party. Despite having voted for it themselves, they needed the law to go through in order to use it as ammunition in hindsight to help them win a general election. And that is the way that politics works. They, it's, without sounding too jaded, they will use laws and regulations which affect everyday people in order to better their situation in a parliamentary role. And the actual Rishi Sunak's smoking law is a prime example of that. Because if smoking is banned for everyone born after that date, that will leave somewhere in the region of an £8 billion black hole in the budget. Right? So smoking costs the NHS around about 2.8 billion a year. Yeah. Smoking brings in about 10.8 or 10.9 billion a year in revenue. Right? £8 billion. Yeah. And where are they going to make up that £8 billion? They're going to make up that £8 billion by taxing everyone who has never smoked. They're going to make up that £8 billion, right, by taxing everyone who's never smoked and never would smoke, right? And they're going to tax all the people who smoke anyway, and they're going to be taxing all the people who enjoy cigars and everything anyway, all right? But they were taxing us previously to make the money, and then we're having to pay more for the NHS. When previously actually it was in the hands of the smokers, which we've kind of got used to. Yeah, we're kind of used to that tax. Right? So it's breaking an already broken system. It doesn't make any sense from a financial level. It doesn't make any sense when you pull apart the books of the country. Who's going to make up that money? Where are we going to make it up? Are we going to increase our national debt? Our national debt is already insane.
It's crazy.
I mean, just like, So if anyone who's ever actually had to deal with their own bank account or pay their own council tax or even their own gas bill looks at this in Parliament, it just won't happen.
It won't happen.
And that's what happened in Australia and New Zealand, exactly that.
Yep. So with that being said, where do you think the cigar industry in the UK specifically is going to be in about 10 years' time?
It's a very good question. I think the cigar industry will be in a really good place. I haven't actually really thought about that. That's a really interesting question. So,
because there'll always be a new hurdle we've got to jump over.
Yeah. I foresee this UK cigar industry growing. I mean, I see other forms of smoking dropping by the wayside more and more. And I think cigars will continue to grow.
Yep.
Because people's interest in specialist goods continue to grow. It's one of those things. Cigar smoking, more than any other form of smoking, and more than many other things, grows with the availability of information.
Yeah.
And you're a great example of that. You're spreading great information to people. You're giving people great information on what cigars to smoke. You're telling people how things are done. You're telling people why things are done. You're empowering people because when people are educated, it helps create a passion based on truth.
Yeah.
And the more that happens with cigars, the more the cigar industry will grow. We'll see greater regulation. We'll see more things thrown at us, but we'll always overcome hurdles.
We always will. It's not going anywhere. I think you're right. I think as an industry, I think we're doing a pretty solid job, not just here at smoking, but I think as an industry, we're working hard on that education side. We don't just glamorize, and predominantly we do glamorize because I always see that cigars have always got a more health benefit than the negatives, especially when it comes to like mental health.
Yeah.
But I think in other aspects of tobacco, especially with like cigarettes and especially with vapes, we need to be getting education in to younger generations.
Yep.
Because, you see these 13, 14-year-olds walking around with vapes.
Yep.
We need to be getting into schools and truly we need to start the education young, because when you're 14, you want to smoke because you want to look cool. You don't care what's in that vape. You don't care what's in that cigarette. You just want to look cool in front of your mates. So we need to be getting in early. And I think I read somewhere that we're getting a lot of young smokers, and I know I get a lot of messages on social media from people going, "Oh, it's my 18th birthday soon.
Yeah.
I want to have a cigar." Obviously, I have to say, message me again when you're 18.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It's kind of like a bittersweet thing. It's amazing to see so many younger people showing passion. It's not I want a big fat cheap cigar to look cool in a picture. They're like, why? Why should I have that? What am I going to get from that?
Yeah, exactly.
It's nice to see a younger generation.
It's really good to see that, isn't it?
So it's kind of like a bittersweet as an industry, because it's like, oh, that's great. So it's almost like we're passing the torch on. We've got the new people coming up at the same time, looking at the government going, it's not helping our case.
Yeah. I think, I do sincerely hope that there are amendments made that will cover cigars and specialist tobacco in that sense, because it is really important. It's really important. I mean, if you look at the way that there are so few things in the modern world that represent such an ancient part of being a human being.
Yep.
So few things. We live in a world, a really fast world, with phones and computers and emails all the time, and AI software, everything going on, zipping all around the place. But there are so few things that represent that ancient act of just sitting there,
A dedication to time.
harnessing something that essentially a controlled sense of danger.
Yes. That's a good way of putting it. And how many things can you say that are on the market these days that this much time and effort, and even just talking about the Tabernacle, how many things in this world and on our markets can you say that much time and effort has gone into it? You design a car, you put it into a machine, and it just pumps out
I
this
wish
amount.
cars were like that. It'd make life really much simpler. But
We'd have a lot more.
Yeah.
We'd have a lot more, a lot cheaper.
Yeah. I'd be a CNC engineer.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. I think something that I always like to really, I like to talk about, which I get, but something I do is I train people in private households, private maritime, and do a lot of training in different environments on cigars for people who never smoke cigars, who never will, but will have to work with cigars on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I always start essentially by breaking down why human beings smoke cigars. And it's a really interesting sort of way of looking at it, in the fact that if you ever sat down in front of a campfire, so you come to the fire and you bring your ruminations on the past and your worries for the future.
Yep.
Then you come to the fire, and the fire's surrounded by people you don't know, actually. It's just surrounded by people you don't know. But you go and sit at this fire. And as you bring yourself to the fire, the past begins to melt away and the future doesn't yet exist.
Yep.
And you're left with this whole sense of presence, and in that true sense of presence, those unknown people can become acquaintance, and then they can move closer in circle and become friends. And there's a sense of openness in presence.
Yep.
And that is really deeply rooted within our brains when we're dealing with fire, in a way that is much older than many parts of the brain which actually we use on a daily basis as modern human beings, as modern hominids. It deals with the parts of the brain which exist truly in the present. And there are so few things that actually utilize that in the modern world. And that is why, in part, cigars have saved my life. They offer that that moment of absolute presence and of absolute peace.
Yep.
Before you even talk about how they taste or how they feel to smoke a cigar.
Yep.
That happens before, because it really ignites a really ancient part of our brain, the part that harnesses fire.
Yeah. That's a really good way of looking. I've never heard anybody explain it in that way.
So,
but I love that.
Fantastic. I'm sure I'm not going to take full credit for that, because I'm sure someone, and I'm sure I've read in a book somewhere, someone has said cigars are the modern campfire. But that is what I really take from that, in sort of an ancient hominid sense, in the fact that we are animals and we're living on a planet, and we are harnessing part of that planet and forcing it into a process, and then utilizing that to actually harness who we really are.
Yeah. I love that. That's a really good way of looking at it.
So yeah.
So what is the future goals for Foundation Cigars? Is it just to carry on with the education and get the word out? Does Nick eventually want to get his entire range over here? What would you say is his next milestone that he wants with Foundation? Or what is your next milestone that you want with Foundation in the UK market?
Well, so for us, we've got a lot of new lines coming out soon, which have been entirely based on feedback from fantastic retailers such as yourselves, you know.
Yeah. And
have been entirely based on feedback from cigar smokers. So we're really going to be bringing in cigars that people really want for very, 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 very good reason. And I think it's really important that we keep sort of going on the educational side. As far as I'm concerned, when I speak about cigars, it's not just to tell people about Foundation. I always like to sort of be able to impart maybe something on other cigars that people have smoked but have wondered about, because it really is an all-encompassing world. But I think for Foundation, you know, and I can't speak for Foundation Cigar Company, but I can speak based on what I've seen.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of really exciting things coming up for Foundation, because they've just announced, and it isn't coming to the UK yet. Yeah.
Okay.
They just announced that Nick Melillo Foundation are now producing a line at the My Father factory.
Wow. Okay.
The new wise man. And he's actually there are only 3 companies that produce at the My Father factory: My Father, Tatuaje, and Foundation.
Wow.
It's a really, really close circle.
Yeah.
You know, really close circle. And so he's going to be producing a lot of really amazing lines coming up, both I think with AJ Fernandez, which the factory uses for a lot of these cigars, and with My Father.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We can expect to see a lot of good things.
Yeah.
Coming. Fantastic. And I don't know if you can say much about it. You got some lighter cigars.
Yeah, we got some cigars that are lighter in body coming in May. I can't really say what they are yet, but I can assure you that. So at the moment there aren't any light-bodied Foundation cigars in the UK.
Yeah, they're very.
Yeah. There are light-bodied Cuban cigars. There aren't light-bodied Foundation cigars, but there will be soon, and I really love them actually. So yeah, I'm really excited for that.
And what about you as a company, as an importer? Are you working on bringing more brands over, or are you solely focusing on the ones that you got at the moment?
So, you know, at the moment we're solely focusing on Foundation.
Yeah.
And we're continuing with sort of our mission for that, because it's really part of our core to sort of do something maybe in a smaller way, but do it really well. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
And to really, really focus. I think that's what we really want to do a little bit differently in that sense. Do something small, really focused.
Absolutely. That's good. I'll tell you what I'll end this on, and is a battle I'm sure you've faced, because I know you're quite active on social media, you're active on the video content creation side.
I should be more active. Yeah.
So should I. But what importance is the whole social media and the content creation and creating things like this? How important is that to the cigar industry at the moment?
Oh, absolutely vital.
Because every platform is trying to shut us down. You can't monetize this, which I understand. Meta, as soon as you're seen as smoking a cigar, it's your shadow ban.
Okay, all right.
What importance have you seen, obviously been in the industry for quite a few years?
Yeah.
And how important do you see it at the moment? Is social media like a real dominant marketing force?
Yeah.
Driving force?
It's absolutely vital. We're nothing without social media. You know, you can't advertise tobacco. I understand why you can't advertise tobacco. You don't really want to see like Marlboro advertised on the school bus, but there's the but it's quite hard as an industry to get information out there. It's quite hard to actually spread stories and actually connect with other cigar smokers, most importantly.
Yeah.
And that is what social media is really important for. We need that sense of community in the cigar industry. We need that sense that there are people out there, you know?
Yeah.
I was lucky that I worked on St. James's Street for years, and I could see cigar smokers all day long, right? You walk out on the street, you pretty much point at someone, you guarantee they're a cigar smoker, yeah? But I know that for many people, you know, living all over the UK, they might not know many other cigar smokers in person, and to have that content online really brings a sense of home, understandably, and helps bring people into the community, because it's a really friendly place. It's a really friendly place.
I haven't met many cigar smokers that we haven't been able to get, and some of my best friends who I've never ever seen in person. Some of my best friends, I don't even know what they look like. But we've all come together on social media because we all have this one great common interest over a great product.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? You know, and social media, you know, getting stories out there, it's just absolutely incredible. And getting people information that I quite often find the information I've put online, you know, I think no one's going to find this interesting. And the amount of people who get in touch with me and say, "Oh, that's really interesting," I'd be quite actually surprised. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, who'd have thought it?
Film yourself smoking a cigar, put it on Instagram, and
yeah, it's quite amazing, isn't it? It's quite amazing. But yeah, it's really vitally important.
See, you've heard it here. This is the second interview, and everyone has said the same thing. We kind of need to be knocking on Meta's and YouTube's door and saying, "We're still here. You can shadow ban us as much as you want, but we ain't going anywhere."
Yeah, it's true. And do you think that? So, do you think? And here's a question for you, right? Yeah. Do you think being shadow banned, which, and I only learnt this term yesterday, yeah, right? I only learnt this term yesterday, and it's my understanding that it essentially means they don't ban you from that platform.
Nope.
They stop advertising your content.
Yeah, so they stop sending you to non-followers. I guarantee if we went onto your Instagram business account and we clicked a few buttons, it will come up saying you cannot be recommended to non-followers.
Yeah.
But if as long as you've already got them, and that's where the struggle comes in, is you can't be shown to non-followers, but you've also got to try and build that community and that following.
Yep, absolutely.
So yeah, that's the shadow. So you won't get blocked completely. You can create as much content as you want.
Yeah,
which doesn't mean people are going to see it. And that's the battle we deal with every day, and especially on places like YouTube. You can't be seen as selling. You have to be journaling. This is why we can't name any specific price. I could tell you exactly how much we retail this at, but I can't. We can say it's a great product for under 30 quid.
Okay, yeah.
But I can't. Same as I can't say this cigar is amazing. Go click the link below. I'll leave it down there. You can't do that either. You have to journal, and that seems to be the loophole.
Okay, yeah.
And that's what I love about the tobacco world. There's so many loopholes that we seem
Loopholes.
to exploit a lot.
Love loopholes.
We seem to exploit them a lot.
Loopholes are my
So-
favourite.
So that's the trick, is to journal your journey. And if you go back and watch any of our videos, I'll never leave a link below. I never say, if you're new to cigars, you'll love this. It's if I was new to the cigars, I wish I started with this. So it's all down to clever wordplay.
Yes. Okay. That's really interesting.
So that's a little trick going forward. And if you can, don't show yourself smoking.
Okay, yeah, don't show yourself smoking.
That's the trick. You'll notice, and if people are following on social media, when I crop the video down, my hands like this.
Yep.
And you'll see this. You'll see the smoke. You can clearly see, and I'm talking about smoking a cigar, and you can see the smoke passing through me.
Yep.
But you physically can't.
You physically can't see the action of smoking.
And you can't see me do that. As soon as you go like that, and it's in shot.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Say goodbye to your engagement.
Oh, well, I apologise.
So when
I've been smoking away.
When I crop this down, we'll be like that.
Yeah.
It'll just be little snippets like so. That's the trick of getting unshadow banned, is put your arm just out of shot when you crop the videos down.
Okay. I'm sorry, I've been holding the cigar in front of me.
So have I. It's fine. We're gonna YouTube are absolutely fine. YouTube do not care. And this is why I was so adamant when I joined smoking, saying we need to be on YouTube. Are you sure? Yes.
Yeah.
And TikTok, because they don't care.
Yeah.
You just can't monetize it.
Yeah.
Which is fine. We just want to educate.
Yeah.
So
it's true.
So that's the trick.
I mean, yeah, I see why TikTok. Yeah, I see why TikTok would be more open to it. You know, as a company with ties to the largest cigar smoking country in the world, I think that the largest smoking country in the world. I think it'd be a bit crazy for them.
Absolutely. So that's the trick.
So yeah.
So thank you for coming on the channel. Thank you for smoking some cigars. That was a great. I'm so glad I saved that cigar to smoke.
Yeah.
With you. It's been sat in the humidor since I saw you a month ago, and it's just been, do I smoke it? Don't I smoke it? Do I smoke it? No. He said this is the cigar that converted him. I'm saving that cigar. So thank you for coming on the channel.
I'm really glad you enjoyed it, and thank you for having me.
No, you are more than welcome any other time. I'm sure this is not going to be the last video we do. So
no, it won't be.
Hit that subscribe button, and you'll see it in future. See you later, guys.